One idea connects Aristotle to Elon Musk across 2,400 years. First principles thinking. The mental model that built empires, launched rockets, and solved problems everyone else called impossible. By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly how to use it. Here's the question that will drive everything you're about to learn. Why do some people look at the same problem everyone else sees and find solutions nobody imagined? The answer isn't intelligence. It's not resources. It's how they think. Most people reason by analogy. They look at what already exists and make small improvements. But first principles thinkers? They tear everything down to foundational truths and rebuild from scratch. Aristotle called these truths the first basis from which a thing is known. 24 centuries later, this same framework helped one entrepreneur challenge an entire industry. But here's what nobody tells you about first principles thinking. It's not just about breaking things down. There's a second step that separates true innovators from everyone else. And that step? We'll get there. First, you need to understand why your brain actively fights against this way of thinking. Your brain is a pattern-matching machine. It evolved to save energy by using shortcuts. When you see a problem, your mind automatically searches for similar situations you've encountered before. This is reasoning by analogy. It's efficient, it's fast, and it keeps you trapped. Think about it. If everyone reasons from the same pool of existing solutions, everyone arrives at the same conclusions. That's why industries get stuck. That's why experts often miss revolutionary breakthroughs. They're prisoners of precedent. Soft like CTA. If this is already clicking for you, hit that like button. It helps more than you know. Aristotle understood this trap over 2 millennia ago. In his work on logic and reasoning, he argued that true knowledge must start from self-evident truths. Not from what others believe, not from what's always been done, from what is undeniably, fundamentally true. But identifying those truths, that requires a specific technique that most people never learn. Now let me show you this from a completely different angle. Picture yourself trying to build an electric car company. The year is 2004. Every expert tells you batteries are too expensive. They point to decades of data. The cost per kilowatt hour has barely moved. Reasonable conclusion? Electric cars can't compete. But what if you refuse to accept that premise? What if instead of asking how much do batteries cost, you asked what are batteries made of? This is the shift. First principles thinkers don't accept the current state as fixed reality. They decompose problems into their most basic elements. Cobalt, nickel, aluminum, carbon, separators. What do these materials cost on the London Metal Exchange? Suddenly, the battery that costs thousands becomes a collection of raw materials worth a fraction of that price. The question transforms from how do we afford expensive batteries to why are batteries expensive in the first place? This decomposition technique has a formal structure. 5 steps that anyone can follow. Step 1. Define the problem clearly. Not what you think the problem is. What it actually is at its core. Step 2. Break down the problem into its fundamental components. What are the basic elements? What cannot be reduced further? Step 3. Question every assumption. Why do we believe each component must be this way? What evidence supports each assumption? Step 4. Create new solutions from the ground up. Using only the verified truths, what becomes possible? Step 5. Test and iterate. Does reality match your reasoning? Here's what makes this powerful. Most problem-solving starts at step 4. People jump straight to solutions without questioning whether the problem itself is correctly understood. That's like building a house on sand. And this brings us to why ancient philosophers were so far ahead of their time. Aristotle didn't just theorize about first principles. He demonstrated something remarkable. But here's where it gets fascinating, and this changes everything. Aristotle didn't just use first principles for abstract philosophy. He applied it to biology, physics, ethics, politics, every domain imaginable. He dissected over 500 animal species. Not because he enjoyed it, because he refused to accept secondhand knowledge about how living things worked. He wanted to see the fundamental truths with his own eyes. Subscribe CTA. If you're starting to see why this matters, hit subscribe. We're just getting to the best part. This is the insight most people miss. First principles thinking isn't just intellectual exercise. It's radical empiricism combined with relentless questioning. And 23 centuries later, one entrepreneur would apply this exact combination to do something everyone said was impossible. He didn't just want cheaper rockets. He wanted to understand from first principles why rockets cost what they cost. The answer would shock an entire industry. The aerospace industry had accepted certain truths for decades. Rockets are expensive. They're essentially disposable. Building them requires specialized contractors charging premium prices. Everyone knew this. It was industry gospel. But what happens when you refuse to worship at that altar? What happens when you ask the Aristotelian question? What are rockets actually made of? Aluminum, titanium, copper, carbon fiber. Just materials. Materials that cost roughly 2% of the finished rocket's price. 2%. The other 98%? Manufacturing inefficiencies. Contractor markups. Outdated processes that nobody questioned because that's how it's always been done. Comment CTA. I want you to think about this. What's the equivalent in your industry? What's everyone accepting that might be completely wrong? Drop it in the comments. This revelation